Oh. Um, but I'll wrap up at the end with a summary. So it's going to be a short video at the end. So a good listener is not going to be distracted. That's the third ear syndrome, right? So imagine I was talking on the phone. I had the phone up at one ear, and then you're standing beside me with a problem. That's not going to work. I mean, multitasking is not what we do when we're trying to get information from uh, or sorry, I should put that another way. When our customer comes to us with an incident and they're trying to explain it to us, that is not the time for multitasking, right? The only thing that we should be doing then is trying to understand them. All right. Okay. So, yeah, all of those things work against that. Um, So we can ask some questions. As it says, here's some types of questions that we would ask. These are all part of our active listening. So notice how they're very specific in trying to identify exactly what it is. Now, before we even start on all these things, right? We want to acknowledge that the if the person comes and they're angry, or they're frustrated that way, we want to acknowledge that and say, look, I see that you're unhappy. You probably have a good reason to. How can I help you? So that probably is going to save you a lot of time just in that, because otherwise they're going to be, if they are angry, they're probably going to take some time to tell you why. And so yeah, there we go. Graciously receive complaints. We we I'm not even gonna. It's good enough as it stands on its own. Okay. Over the telephone. So on the telephone, you can't see. We don't have. Oh, well, you can, right? You could do a video call. But if you weren't doing a video call and you're just talking to the person, and most of us don't like video calls with people that we don't know, so we tend to just stick to the voice thing. But in that case, we don't really have we can't sort of look at the person's eyes and see the way they're standing to see if they're angry, but we can still pick it up pretty well by the tone of voice. And likewise, that's what they will be listening for in us. So on the telephone, your tone of voice is going to be very, very important. And perhaps it's even worthwhile actually listening to yourself on the telephone and see, well, how does that tone of voice sound, right? Because you don't want to sound sort of threatening or angry when you're talking to your customers. You want to sound like that you care and that you're interested in what they're doing. This diagram is a really good one, and I won't go into it a lot because if you go to the slides that I gave you, I'm sure that I made a full discussion on it. But basically, the idea being that communications of all types, this type of diagram could be used by a telephone company, but communications of all types requires that you encode a message, that you send it down a channel, and that you decode it. And in every one of those steps, there are things that can stop the communication from getting through properly, and we refer to those as noise, or things that can be added to the message that make diffuse the message so that it's not obvious. So we need to be aware of that, and that's why we need to check to see, did you get that message? Did you understand? And you need to check, did I understand? Because you sent me this message, came through the channel, this is what I think I heard, but I don't know, maybe I better just check. So that's what that's about. Communication can't really just be assumed. It's something that's a little bit tricky. Rapport and trust, I'm not even going to sort of say too much about that. I mean, this is the type of thing that I think is kind of natural. You're probably as good at it as I am. We're social beings. You're probably better at it. I am. I tend to be a bit introverted, but we're social beings, and part of the socializing is that we end up with these groups of people that we trust because of the rapport that we've built up through lots of little interactions. Now that could be, yeah, small groups, it probably works better than in large groups. Yeah. And so I've already made this point here, which is about when we're on the phone, we got all this nonverbal communication that is not available to us. People can't see our face. They can't see our eyes. They can't see where we're looking. They can't see our posture. But what they can pick up on is they can pick up on the tone of the voice, and that's gives a lot of communication. And yeah, so when we're talking to people, remember that what we're trying to do is not sort of bamboozle them or improve our intelligence or anything. We're trying to get a particular message across, and so we speak in the words that they will understand. Okay, and the other thing here is I think it was mentioned in the previous lesson about the can-do attitude. Can do. So basically, the idea being, what can we do? Let's focus on that. Let's not focus on what we can't do. So in other words, let's be really positive. Let's be positive. So instead of saying, "Oh, we can't do that," instead of saying that, we say, "Oh, this is what we can do, and this is what we can do," and maybe, and by doing that, we are going to manage the expectations of the customer, but at the same time, we're going to do it in a way which is sort of positive rather than negative. Yeah, so if there's nothing else to do, and the other thing is, don't sort of make it sort of too personal. If there's some issue, you did this wrong, you did not put in the right configuration for this device. And rather than say that, you could just say, well, let's check the configuration together and see what we've got. I mean, it's a little less personal and a little less threatening. And that's the points that are made there. So yeah, basically, we don't want to be sort of pointing fingers. We don't want to make it personal and negative. We do want to be listening very carefully to our customers, and keeping in mind all the time that what we're trying to do is remove that roadblock that has occurred, that has brought them to you in the first place. And so be positive. Don't be humiliating or threatening or whatever. Um, yeah. And so here's a lot of negative things that we don't do. The idea of this image here is that even though these people are not really saying anything with their words, that it's commonly understood that the way that they are standing, looking, tilting their head, etc., actually may be communicating something. Now, this is not always cross-culturally the same. So, in other words, in some cultures, it's a little different than others. I kind of learned, though there's a few things I haven't, but so for example, in this part of the world, the basically everywhere east of Europe, um, it's if you have your feet up pointing at somebody, apparently that's kind of rude. So I try not to do that, right? So I mean, where I came from in Alberta in Canada, nobody would even notice. It doesn't mean anything. So you may see somebody from Alberta, Canada, with their feet up pointing at you, and yeah, it doesn't mean anything to them. It might mean something to you. I don't know. You can comment on that if you like. But I have been told that that's not a good thing. So you keep your feet below you or behind you or something like that, but not pointing at other people. And so that that's the type of thing that I mean. Some of these things are not exactly cross cultural, but some of them are, and these things just kind of happen. We just do it naturally without noticing. Now, if you study it, you can be a bit more careful and make sure that the way that you're standing is communicating what you want it to communicate. And so, you can just be like this girl here, looking at the person, interested, not with your hands on your hips, maybe with your hands in not in your pockets, you know what I mean? Not on your hips, but in a more neutral fashion. And also not crossed arms, because that means that maybe you're a bit angry or you're not accepting what the person's saying. So in a more neutral stance, kind of, but looking at the person and uh, yeah, just oriented towards them, not hiding your eyes with sunglasses, not tilting your head to indicate that you're sort of skeptical of what they're saying, not holding your thing, or your ear. People putting their hand on their face or their ear. Some people say that that means that they're lying when they're talking. Well, you don't want people to think you're lying. Not crossing your legs, crossing your arms, kind of indicates that you might be. See, these are things that are happening at the back of our heads, right? We're not thinking about it in our in our the front of our heads where we do our sort of our conscious thinking. So in our subconscious somehow it's doing something with our arms and legs, and it's based on what we're feeling. And so if we're lying, some people just will, hold their face while they're lying, or hold their ear. And so if you start doing that, you might not be lying, but people will think, oh well, because some people hold their ear when they're lying, maybe you're lying because you're holding your ear. You get the idea. I'm not going to go on that on too much more. Um, so be respectful. As I said, if there is any specific culture here could work with within a company as well as in a country. I gave you my example of what I think about the feet thing. I could be wrong about that, but that's my understanding of it. And I welcome somebody correcting me on that. So a lot of what we're going to be communicating is by our voice. Now, there's things there. If you can't see the person, all you really got there is your voice. Don't sort of fake enthusiasm, as it says. Mind you, some people do that pretty good. I notice Americans, when I talk to them on the telephones and stuff like that, hey, nice to see you. You're like, yeah, I don't even know this person, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's better than sort of like, who are you? Um, so I don't really have a problem with it. I mean, if you want to be sort of enthusiastic, even when you're not really enthusiastic, I'm okay with that. It's all right. It's not really that negative a thing. Your energy is reflected from your voice. Basically, we got the high and low pitch thing, and I think that's sort of mentioned here somewhere. The rate of speech. People can listen faster than they can write, and faster than they can talk. Um, um, Generally. Yeah, okay. Yeah, here's the bit about the pitch that I wanted to talk to you. So be careful when people get nervous. What happens is sort of muscles contract, and the muscles in your throat can contract a bit, and so your voice goes up a bit, right? And so if your voice does sort of go to a higher pitch, people might think that that's an indication that you're a bit nervous. So you need to be careful with that. So one of the things that you might notice is if you raise your voice like that, your tone will go so if you raise your head like that, your tone will go up a bit. And so if you want to lower that tone a bit, you want to slow things down a bit, and you don't want to be putting your head up. You want to put your head more even. And as it says there, people sort of tend to think that, I don't know if strong's a word, but sort of more confident. If you keep your voice more low, that's showing that you're not really nervous, because your vocal cords are not constricting. Um, yeah. So our tone of voice, use it with the right words. Go back to this thing here. What do you expect me to do about it? I don't think I would say that to somebody, but I could. I have found this works pretty good with people, is to say, how can I? What could I do right now? What could I do now that would help? People kind of respond to that. I remember one particular situation where the person was yelling at me. You know what I mean? And it was not good. And basically, I just waited until they finished doing all their yelling. You know what I mean? And then I just stopped, and then I just said, "What do you want me to do?" And boom, all that anger was gone. It was amazing. And yeah, so I mean that can go. I'm sure that the tone was important there. I mean, I genuinely just wanted to know what I could do, and you know, the other stuff just all fell away really quickly. That was amazing. Um, as it says, people are different. Some people are kind of what would I say, irascible. They just seem to be always annoyed, and some people just are always sort of on a high note. And we have to deal with them all. Not the same. We have to deal with the people that are seem to be annoyed in a way that we can communicate with them. And that's where these notes come in. And you would have seen that maybe that our lesson's going to finish in less than 10 minutes, but uh, depending on the personality, and you're not going to get a note come from the customer, this is my personality, I'm an aggressor, but you're going to figure it out pretty quickly, right? So the aggressive person is going to want to take control of the conversation. And I got a student ringing me. It's one of you guys? No, it's from my other class. I'll have to take him in a minute. Um, yeah, sorry about that. Um, do you mind if I just take that message, that phone? Oh, he's gone. He'll call. I'll call him back later. Get there. Yes, with aggressors, you can use their name. I'm not going to go through that. Just to say that there's these different personality styles. People are different, and with the aggressive person, you do need to sort of take back control of the conversation a bit, and they won't really mind because that's just the way they deal. Right, where the amiable person, they maybe just want to talk about a lot of stuff, right? They're going to tell you their life story and all the things they're interested in. And in that case, you also have to take control a little bit and sort of get back to focus on what's going on. That's more pleasant, but still has to work. So you got different kinds of questions that you can ask. I'm sure you're familiar with these. Your close-ended and your open-ended questions. Close-ended questions just have a yes or a no or a number or some little fact answer, whereas an open-ended question is things where you're asking them to sort of open up and explain a lot more. So with the aggressive people, you don't want to be giving them too much of them open-ended stuff because they're just going to go with it, right? Complainers, as it says there, you want to show that you understand why they're complaining. I, they might not be actually right in their emotional response to that. So we don't use the word sympathize, but we use the word empathize. Empathize meaning that we actually understand them. Know-it-alls, yeah, with those people, we don't sort of contradict them because they're going to say, this is what I think you should do. And then you, instead of saying, no, that's wrong, you might say, well, yeah, that sounds good, but let's also try this other thing. So in a way which sort of doesn't sort of contradict them too much, because it seems that that's a issue with know-it-alls. Passive people, they're going to be hard to get anything out of them, right? I mean, all they're going to do is respond yes, no kind of thing. So you're going to have to really lead them in any conversation where you're trying to get some words out of them. So remember that when you're talking to customers, that it's about communication. So use the kind of words and symbols that both you and the customer understand. So that's what that's about. If you got to use jargon, make sure that they understand it. And so, maybe the customer doesn't understand what you mean by the system and the printer and that kind of stuff. What they understand is they can't log on and they can't print. And so, yeah, maybe we should just talk to them that way. And that's it. We got to the end of that chapter. Is there any questions on that? We've only got sort of about 7, 8 students here. I don't know why that is. Right. So I'm going to just take a image of who's here. I think. Yeah, there it is. Somehow that got away from me. New one. Okay, so that's who I've got who's come. Any sort of comments? Maybe you can just leave a comment, everybody. So I might lag behind a bit. That's all right, Ali. Could you guys just leave a comment each in the chat, at least? If you're not going to talk to me, you could at least do that. Yeah, okay, so I can see that you're still there. Yeah, Unit 1 is done, thanks. What we will do next week is I will start with a lab. Unit 1 is done, and we're actually done Unit 2 as well. Thanks, Hadar Shuk. Yusuf, Ali, and Omar. Nice to see your names. I can't say nice to see you, just nice to see your names. Any questions at all? So again, I'm going, you know what? I have to really share the screen to sort of see. Any questions at all? Come up in the chat. No. All right. So there's our. Okay. So I don't see any questions. So I think I'll end. Oh, here we go. How to